Sean, we're down here at Neptune Theatre, site of last night's leadership debate. A little bit of political theater last night, although perhaps not as entertaining as some of the shows we're used to seeing down here. That being said, I thought as far as leadership debates go, this one was pretty good.
Yeah, they sometimes turn into shouting matches. We've seen that in the past, or they're dull as dishwater. I would say this one kind of hit the sweet spot in the middle, thanks to
Tom Murphy
and
Amy Smith
moving things along. I thought it gave the three leaders an opportunity to kind of stake out their ground.
This election is about our recovery. The choices we make now will impact us later on.
As diverse as this province is, Nova Scotians are united on one common thing. We need to fix healthcare.
This election is about real people and their real lives and getting a government that puts them front and center, which we in the NDP are ready to provide.
Ian Rankin very much wants to talk about the future. The reality is he's only been premier for a few months, but there is an 8-year record of government. He was a part of that government and in cabinet for part of it as well. And there are aspects of that record that the other two gentlemen wanted to attack last evening that he didn't want to get into.
Owl's Head, most notably.
How can you credibly present yourself as a climate champion when you have not reversed the decision to turn Owl's Head into a golf course?
I will not be in favor of any project that has any long-term adverse impacts to any sensitive ecosystem. What I will do is listen to communities when they want to have their voice heard.
We need to be open, fair, transparent. I think what happened at Owl's Head, the secret, the backroom deal, is just an appalling thing. It should never have happened.
Let's let Mr. Rankin reply to that.
An obligation for the public service is listening to every voice. I had an obligation to listen to that community. They're going through a process.
Tim Houston, from the opening statement to the close, was very obvious about the fact that for him the issue is healthcare, his plans to try to fix it, and the Liberals' inability to address it during 8 years.
And here's what I would say. If you feel like you're being criticized, look in the mirror, because you got to make better decisions on how you support Nova Scotians. If you can't stand there and be accountable to Nova Scotians, as Premier, I will be accountable to you. Mr. Rankin's not willing to.
So he's not willing to say that he said there.
And it's really interesting that we're in the midst of an election where you have the sitting government accusing the other two parties of making it rain during the election, and him being more of a fiscal conservative small c.
Well, it's not something that we're used to seeing, you're right, but we also saw Gary Burrell in particular take Ian Rankin to task for the idea that coming out of a pandemic and an economic contraction that he should be trying to balance the budget in 4 years. And of course, Gary Burrell rolled out that well-trodden talking point at this point that for the Liberals to do that would require service cuts that are going to affect people. But of course, the other thing Gary Burrell talked about a lot was the idea that people are struggling, they need more help, and he and his party are the team to do that.
Do you not acknowledge that in the 8 years in which your party has been in power, the grand total of new nursing home beds that were built was 57? Is that not a fact?
We have more underway, and we've been investing in home care. Nova Scotians, if they can, want to stay at home. That's why every single budget, we've increased our budget for home care.
Yep.
And this is where, for Ian Rankin, it's a tricky balance from a campaign perspective, because on the one hand, he is new, he is fresh as a leader, but he is not new to the Liberal government that's been in power since 2013. And while somebody else was at the helm of the government when many of these decisions were being made, the fact remains that he and many of the people reoffering were part of that government, and the opposition wants to remind the public of that.
And that's why you heard Tim Houston saying over and over again, Rankin's team, tying him to the government, the previous government, and trying to make that record stick. Now, whether or not a lot of people were paying attention, we're in the middle of a summer campaign. We've just come out of the pandemic where people can spend time on patios, going to the theater. Whether or not anyone's paying attention, well, we'll have to wait and see whether or not this kind of debate shifts any votes, and we'll find that out on
August 17th.